Hello, everybody, and I'm so glad that you have decided to revisit Pride and Prejudice with me as I go through it here for the very first time. So this will be chapters 6 through 10 of Volume 1. And in Chapter 6, we have lots and lots of visiting going on. The ladies of Longbourn soon waited on those of Netherfield. That means they visit. And then, of course, when someone visits you, you have to visit them back because it's the rules. But what was really interesting in this, at the very beginning of Chapter 6, was that it tells us that Bingley's sisters, we already know they like Jane, who is the oldest of the daughters. But it's interesting that it says that they are interested in getting to know the two eldest better, which is Jane and Elizabeth. And I didn't think that they had been much interested in Elizabeth. And it made me wonder, since Jane and Elizabeth seem to be, close, and then Mary's kind of by herself, and then Kitty and Lydia are kind of buddies, if really they want to get to know Jane, but they know that Jane likes Elizabeth, and also there are two of them, so it makes sense for them to have a foursome. I'm thinking it's because they picked up on Jane's closeness to Elizabeth, so they want Jane to like them, so they want to show their approval of the person that she likes. It's kind of my guess. And I'm also curious, the two sisters of Mr. Bingley are referred to as Mrs. Hurst and Miss Bingley. And what I've understood previously is that the eldest sister receives the surname, and the others are referred to as Miss and then their first name. So it would be Miss Bennet would be Jane, and then Miss Elizabeth would just be Miss Elizabeth because she doesn't get to be called Miss Bennet because she's not the oldest. However, the younger sister, as I understand it, Miss Bingley is the younger sister. And I'm wondering if it's like a title but instead of passing down just from like parent to child, it passes down through the siblings as the other ones get married, as the other sisters get married and take on their husband's surname. So does the next oldest sister kind of inherit it? I guess. I don't know. I'm kind of liking Charlotte Lucas. She's very sensible, and I'm wondering if she's speaking from experience. She's talking about how Jane needs to let Mr. Bingley know how she feels. But they go back and forth about that. She's talking to Elizabeth, and Elizabeth's saying this is just how Jane is, and Charlotte's like, yeah, he doesn't know that. Why would he know that she likes it if she doesn't, I mean, obviously she can't just tell him that because that would be improper and unacceptable and not okay. But she should flirt, which goes completely against Jane's nature because she's not gossipy and, not that she's not vivacious, but she's nice and she's kind of quiet. And I'm just really glad that it is at least somewhat acceptable now for women to be forthright about their affections, maybe it's a little bit nerve-wracking, I guess, but I mean, it's nerve-wracking for guys, I'm sure, but you can just tell a guy that you like him, be like, hey, how's it going? I think you're cute. It's that simple. Or you can ask him out. You can say, hey, you seem really nice. So I was wondering if you would want to go see, well, please don't go see the new Wonder Woman in theaters because, social distancing and all. So, once the pandemic's over, ask him to go see a movie with you or something like that, or go out to eat or go to, especially around here, go to a park once the weather's nice. It's great. We have some lovely parks. You can do all kinds of things. And I'm also really glad that just being single as a woman is an option. You can have a job and support yourself, and it's perfectly okay. I mean, I guess maybe in some circles it's not, but I don't travel in those circles, so I wouldn't know. You can have a perfectly happy, comfortable life and not have to depend on the husband. That's nice. Charlotte seems to think that having a rotten husband is better than having no husband at all. And that's just, yeah, that's bad. That's no, Charlotte, no. I mean, maybe it is for her. God, I hope that's not the case. Also, why is she unmarried? Her family is wealthy, and her father's a knight. And, I mean, maybe we find out later. I don't know. Maybe she is speaking from experience and knows that, you have to hint to the guy or he won't know that you like him and he will propose to somebody else and your heart will be crushed. Maybe that happened to her. Maybe that's why she's telling Elizabeth that Jane needs to drop some hints. I don't know. I want to find out more about Charlotte. We find out that Darcy is starting to be attracted to Elizabeth. See, loser, you shouldn't have run your mouth like you did. Ah! Dork. No, in fact, he doesn't even get to be a dork. He's a jerk, not a dork. The distinction is important. So they are at Charlotte's dad, Sir William Lucas's, and Austen dumps on Mary. And I'm not cool with this, y'all. I'm just not. So we are told that she is the only one of the the only one of the sisters who isn't good looking. And I'm just like, well, okay, so she's not. That sucks for her. But then she has worked very hard to become accomplished. Well, good for her. But then Austen tells us she was always impatient for display. Quote from Austen. And I'm like, wouldn't you be? Surrounded by 4 sisters whose good looks are always on display. Why not? Why wouldn't you want to, show off what makes you special when you don't have their good looks and all of them do? And then we're also told that she had neither genius nor taste. Women, of course, wouldn't have been allowed to be geniuses. Can you imagine a female Mozart in that day and age? I mean, women who didn't fit in weren't supported or much less celebrated. They were punished. Okay, so maybe Mary did have genius. And she just hasn't actually been supported in really pushing through because she's socially awkward. Just like, we hear about Mozart, maybe, possibly, in, fiction. Just not cool with this. Thinking I need some, fanfic for Mary. Make some recommendations down in the comments, please. And Darcy is still being a jerk. Dude, she's not playing hard to get. You were unkind, and you haven't apologized or made any attempt to make amends for you being a jerk. And you're still being a jerk. Oh, no. Darcy. God. So that's chapter 6. Moving on to chapter 7. We are told about the entailment of the property, that it's going to go to a distant cousin. A distant relation who ends up being a cousin of some sort. They know way more about their cousins than we do. Anyway, this estate has to pass down to the nearest male relative when Mr. Bennet dies. But I've often been curious about the particulars of entailments. Mr. Bennet and his family are living off of the interest produced by the estate that is entailed. And it does tell us his property consisted almost entirely in this estate. But if he had invested some of the income from the estate, and that investment produced profit, would that profit be entailed? Or would it count as a free expenditure of the income to which he was entitled anyway, and that could be set aside for his daughters? At any rate, that may be something that, we're not supposed to think super highly of anybody in the family except for Jane and Elizabeth. And this may be part of Mr. Bennet's personal failings, that he just assumed there was going to be a son, and he didn't make any additional investments, that he didn't put any additional work into making a backup plan for the daughters. Which would have been kind of nice to have anyway, even if he had a son. Just assuming that the son is going to take care of them, of all of the rest of the family. I don't know. It seems kind of obnoxious. I don't know. Maybe that's just how things were done. Whatever. As we continue, there is a militia in town nearby, and the younger daughters are all agog over the militia boys. Ensigns? Really? Girls, you do so much better than an ensign. I know, okay? I'm just saying. At any rate, Jane is invited to Netherfield, and she rides there. But she gets sick and has to stay overnight. The next morning, Elizabeth walks the 3 miles over to Netherfield because the carriage is unavailable to go check on her. They get a note from the footman telling, Jane says, I can't come home, I'm sick. They're saying, stay until I get better. So the mom, of course, is just like, ooh, she gets to stay and she can get to know Mr. Not deliberately, but not directly, but you get the idea that she's like, oh, this is great. She can, with Mr. Bingley, which, of course, Jane's not going to do, so it's not going to matter, but whatever. At any rate, so Elizabeth's plan is to go over after breakfast, walk over, and check in on Jane, and then walk back in the afternoon for dinner. Or not for dinner, but so that she can be home for dinner. But Jane, when she goes to leave, Jane starts getting upset. And she's like, I don't feel good, and you're here, and I don't want you to go. And the Miss Bingley invites Elizabeth to stay with them as well. Jane, of course, being Jane and being so good and not wanting to worry anybody, has downplayed her illness. If we were past the halfway point of this book, I would be worried for Jane. I would be very concerned about her chances of survival because she is so lovely and sweet and gentle and kind and good. One might be afraid that she is too good for this sinful earth. See the link below. Great article, lots of fun to read. However, we're not even 35 pages in, so I think she's going to need lots of rest, comforted by the knowledge that her dear sister is nearby, while said dear sister must spend time in the close company of not only the Bingley family, but with their other guest, the horrid Mr. Darcy. And Jane's going to get better. So that's my prediction. Chapter 8. Not a lot happens in this chapter. Jane's still sick. And when Elizabeth leaves the common room with, the rest of the family, the Bingley sisters are snarky about her, walking through muddy fields to visit her sister. Darcy does not speak up in support of her. Bingley is the only one who does. Mr. Hurst, he doesn't talk much. We don't get to know him, and I don't think we're supposed to care about him too much. We're supposed to kind of forget that he's there, I guess. I think the older sister's name is Louisa, and the younger one is Caroline. But I might have them backwards, so don't hold me to it. We also get the first mention of Pemberley. Oh, Pemberley. The Bingleys just gush over Pemberley. Now, it is important that I'm pretty sure that Darcy owns Pemberley, which might be part of why they're so, woo, Pemberley, is because they're kind of hinting to their brother that he is supposed to purchase, not just rent, an estate. And then there's a discussion of what it means for a lady to be accomplished. Darcy. No one can be really esteemed who does not greatly surpass what is usually met with. Which kind of makes sense. I mean, if somebody's going to be held in great esteem, it's kind of comparative. A woman must have thorough knowledge of music, singing, drawing, dancing, and the modern languages. Not really sure which ones count as modern. To deserve the word. And besides all this, she must possess a certain something in her air and manner of walking, the tone of her voice, her address and expressions, or the word will be but half deserved. Darcy's the one who adds in the importance of reading, quote, to improve her mind, which of course is very significant. I guess he doesn't consider that a person could improve their mind through conversation with others, or by studying art, or music, or mathematics, or cooking, or any of a number of other subjects. But I think some of this is the author's bias, because Austen, of course, is a writer of books and, presumably approves of women reading. And this is, something that, normally would be poo-pooed. And so, some of her own, getting I think maybe she has been twitted about enjoying reading, and so she has her male lead speak up in favor of it because, you know, she's speaking through him there. So I'm not willing to give him points for that. No, sorry. And I'm not sorry. I'm not. So there. And Darcy says that a woman is only truly accomplished if she's good at everything, which is simply ridiculous. And Elizabeth is quite right to call him out on it. He is a pompous, unreasonable turd. And that's chapter 8. He's still a turd in chapter 9. Are we surprised? No. Maybe you are. I am not surprised. Mr. Darcy is a turd. I don't like him. I think... Are we supposed to like him yet? I mean... I think you're supposed to be developing, you know, an interest in him. But he's a jerk. And he'd better apologize, because, I mean, I know he's like the guy. But he better apologize really, really good and admit that he was wrong. He was wrong. Better apologize really good. And he needs to shut his trap about the limited opportunities of country life and listen to Miss Jane Marple, who is not in this book. Let's make that clear. She's not in this book. She's not by this author. She is a character from Agatha Christie, who is often disparaged for, you know, not really knowing about the world, very much like the discussion that goes on here with the rest of the Bennet family, or not the rest of the Bennet women come to visit. Mr. Bennet doesn't bother. he's the patriarch, but he just doesn't bother. I guess that's kind of his thing. He doesn't bother. So anyway, Mrs. Bennet and the rest of the daughters come over to check in on Jane, pretty much to make sure that she stays. And they don't really talk to Jane about, you know, trying to get her to flirt with Mr. Bingley. I guess she's still pretty sick, and they realize that she can't, but they want her to stick around long enough so that she gets better and can flirt. I guess that's the idea. Anyway, they take exception to the Netherfield bunch dogging on country life. And Miss Marple, in Agatha Christie's Mysteries, that feature Miss Marple as like the smart one, often gets, I mean, that's kind of her thing, is people are just like, oh, well, you know, you don't really understand, you know, you haven't seen much of the world, and, you know, you haven't traveled a lot, and you've lived all your life in this tiny country village. What would you know about something so terrible and so nice little old lady? What would you know? How would you understand, you know, the mind of a murderer? And Miss Marple says, well, when you live in a village, you get lots of opportunity to see people really close up over a period of time and to get to know them really well. And what you realize, if you pay attention, is that people are pretty much the same no matter where you go. And in their good things and in their bad things. And you don't lose out by living in the country. Mr. Darcy. Anyway, Elizabeth becomes uncomfortable because her mother is hinting really broadly about how amazing Jane is. But let's be honest. Jane is amazing. We are told this, you know, the narrative frames us this way. The author tells us this. Is she being rude? I don't think we're supposed to think that. Miss Austen. Miss Austen. She's Miss. Lydia, who is officially named the youngest at 15, so Kitty must be 16, I guess. Lydia reminds Mr. Bingley that he is supposed to host a ball, and he says he will. And their mother points out that it would be really unkind if they didn't wait until Jane got better first. And he is absolutely in agreement with that. I mean, in fairness, she's not wrong. It'd be like, okay, well, we'll try to keep it down because you're sick and you can't come and you're, you know, nursing a terrible headache and a racking cough. We'll have fun without you, but we'll try to let you rest. I mean, but you get the idea that he's not just being polite, that he wants her to be there. So anyway, the other Bennets leave and Elizabeth goes to stay with Jane in her sick room while everybody else is in, like, the main part of the house. So the Bingley sisters proceed to gossip with Mr. Darcy about the behavior of the Bennet clan. Although the sisters are unable to goad him into saying anything nasty about Elizabeth in particular. I think we're supposed to think well of Mr. Darcy for this. Never mind that Mr. Bingley and Mr. Hurst do not join in the pettiness at all. And the only nice thing that Mr. Darcy says about Elizabeth is he continues his bit about her nice eyes. No, he doesn't even do that in this chapter. He won't say anything nasty about Elizabeth. It doesn't even tell us that he says anything nice about her. But he simply only gossips about the rest of the family. No. Ugh. I think I would get along quite well with Mr. Hurst. Elizabeth is not real keen on him, but we are told that he likes food and card games. And I'm really, not a fan of bridge, strategy games, and just not a fan of competition in general. It just stresses me out. So maybe not with the card games, but if he preferred fancy food to simple food and I felt otherwise, it would give us something to talk about. And also, I mean, I like all kinds of food, so, like, we could totally talk about food. Like, I don't know, maybe it would be improper because, like, he's married. I don't know. But I mean, I'm married, so I guess it would be okay. I don't know. I wouldn't be able to, gosh, the rule, so many rules. So many rules, you guys. Oh my God. All right. So, chapter 10. So, we start off with Mr. Hurst and Mr. Bingley playing cards. Mrs. Hurst is watching. Mr. Darcy is writing a letter to his sister. And Miss Bingley is watching him. I guess they didn't have TV, so there wasn't anything else to watch. I don't know. Like, this does not seem like scintillating entertainment, ladies. Whatever. But she keeps, like, talking to him. Miss Bingley keeps talking to Mr. Darcy about what he's writing and saying, "Oh, tell your sister I said hi." And he's like, "I already did that in the last paragraph when you asked me to do that 5 minutes ago." I don't know. I guess, I don't know, maybe she's hinting that she's bored and she wants her to pay attention to her, and he's just either not able or not willing to take the hint. I don't know. Maybe this was normal. I don't know, you guys, but it just seems really dull. Like, it's interesting to read about because it's kind of hilarious in how boring it must have been for them, but I don't get it. I don't get it at all. Elizabeth is doing some needlepoint, so she's the only female character who's actually doing something instead of watching somebody else do something. I guess the needlepoint was either sent over with her clothes, or maybe her family brought it when they came the previous day, or maybe Mr. Bingley, who seems to be a thoughtful kind of guy, brought her some supplies. Or maybe she had it with her. I don't know. Maybe ladies always have needlepoint them. Maybe all ladies have needlepoint on them at all times because it's lady stuff. I don't know. Anyway, they all get to talking, and Mr. Darcy has the absolute hypocrisy to call Mr. Bingley out on not thinking before he speaks. Like, I mean, it can't be on purpose. He's just got to be that ignorant. Jeez. Elizabeth takes the position that Mr. Bingley is perfectly reasonable to change his mind based on the recommendation of a trusted friend. But Mr. Darcy seems to think it's better to make up your own mind and stick to your convictions, even when somebody that you trust tells you otherwise. Poor Mr. Bingley. Apparently he just wants everybody to get along, bless his heart. He says, arguments, he says, are too much like disputes. And I'm just like, I think the way we would say this is that a debate is too much like an argument. But I like Mr. Bling. I just want to pinch his cheeks and like give him a big hug. He just seems like a sweetie. He deserves so much better than this. God, and I mean, spoiler alert. So like, skip ahead 30 seconds or so if you don't know anything about the book and you don't want to find out about stuff later. Mr. Bingley marries Jane. Thank God! Oh my God. Because everybody else is ticking me off. So anyway, he wants everybody to get along. Elizabeth says, then maybe your buddy should shut up and write his letter. She doesn't actually say that, in case you're wondering, but that's what she was thinking. Oh, Darcy, for his part, keeps sneaking peeks at Elizabeth, and she notices, but she figures that it's because he finds her irritating. Well, he does, but thanks to an omniscient narrator, we know it's because he likes her. Anyway, he finishes his letter and asks her and Miss Bingley if they'll provide some music. And apparently he ignores Mrs. Hurst. Why? Jeez. He's so obnoxious. I don't like him. So the two ladies do the tartly civil dance of, go ahead. No, you go ahead. Oh, no, I insist. No, really, you must. And then Miss Bingley does the music because she is going to get her claws into Mr. Darcy. However, it doesn't work because Mr. Darcy comes over to Elizabeth to talk to her because Miss Bingley is playing the music. So he is taking an opportunity there. And he very carefully does not ask her to dance. But he does ask her if she would be interested in dancing. Completely hypothetically. At first, she lets the question slide and just kind of smiles politely. But he asks again. Don't do that. That's rude. But anyway, she should have looked around and said, well, yes, but I should need a partner. And I find no one here to tempt me. And then smiled at him. But she's a little gentler than she ought to have been, I think. And unfortunately for her, because she is, our omniscient narrator tells us that Darcy had never been bewitched by any woman as he was by her. Elizabeth, unfortunately, is the sort who does stick to her convictions in this case. The confidence that Mr. Darcy can't stand her, and so she doesn't notice this. Oh, but Miss Bingley does! The next day, she goes on a walk with Mr. Darcy, who apparently suspects nothing from her, because he's such a good judge of character, right? Spoiler alert. I know about that. And Miss Bingley mocks Elizabeth's family and Elizabeth herself and her fine eyes. And Mr. Darcy mocks Miss Bingley right back by complimenting Elizabeth's eyes even further. Anyway, then they happen across Elizabeth and Mrs. Hurst. And Mrs. Hurst is like, oh, thank God it's you. You left me alone with a loser, and grabs Mr. Darcy's other arm. And they're about to head off when he actually notices that they're being rude by ditching her. What? So, I don't know, maybe we're supposed to think that there's hope for him, that he's not completely oblivious, but whatever. At any rate, Elizabeth is like, no, I am fine with the solution, and laughs in his face, and then, I quote, ran gaily off. She practically skips away from the jerks, and I do not blame her at all. Oh. Whew. Man, she must love her sister a lot, because she's been there for like 4 days now. Putting up, because Jane doesn't have to put up with them. Jane doesn't, and there's also an earlier bit where Elizabeth talks about how Jane just always sees the good in people. And Jane's like, well, I find the world's nicer that way, and, it's nice to see the good in people. But And maybe that's why they're so nice to her, because she sees the good in them, and then that, they like that, and that makes them be nicer to her. So there's more good to see. But Elizabeth isn't that sweet. And then they're not nice to her. And she's like, see? They deserve it. But then she's stuck with them. So maybe Elizabeth should learn to see the good in people. So when her sister gets sick and she goes over to keep her company and she's stuck there for 4 days, it doesn't suck quite so bad. Oh my goodness. So, that's what I think. I am enjoying the book. I do have some strong opinions about it, as you can tell. And I hope that you found them amusing. And please, no spoilers in the comments. I will continue to work my way through this book. Probably continuing 5 chapters at a time. I don't know. I might stop at the end of volume 1 if it's only 3 chapters. And so no spoilers in the comments, but tell me what you think of what has happened so far. I would love to have a discussion with you. Thanks so much for watching along and letting me know what you think. And have a great rest of your day. Bye!